One thing I love about the stories you hear each week on the show is that every brand starts with a story. Behind every product is the founder who took a chance on an idea, overcame challenges, and worked hard to bring it to life. Walmart is making it easier for customers to discover products from small brands and support the people behind them. With thousands of small brands available through Walmart, customers can discover innovative products while learning about the entrepreneurs and stories that brought them to life. By helping connect these brands with communities across the country, Walmart is creating more opportunities for founders to grow and share what makes their products unique. Visit walmart.com to learn more.
And away we go, episode 1364 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Wednesday, July 8th, 2026, and our friend, our pal, our homie, San Francisco 49ers receiver Brandon Aiyuk, he on Tuesday in an Instagram post provided more details of his dispute with the Niners, including saying that he, quote, will not be reinstating with them, nor ever doing any kind of business with them. I'm locked in and focused on my opportunity to return to the field this season. Hashtag raise hail. End quote. So a few things from Aiyuk as he continues this social media campaign to be released by the Niners and be signed by the Washington Commanders. Does this guy not understand the mechanics of his situation? He doesn't currently have an agent, so he maybe doesn't understand the mechanics of the situation. But as we, over the last two episodes of this podcast, episodes 1362 and 1363, discussed with former Washington Redskins salary cap analyst J.I. Wholesale, who currently is the executive vice president of client compensation for Three Strand Sports and Entertainment, a prominent agency, the path for Aiyuk getting what he wants is clear. A, apply for reinstatement from the reserve/left squad list on which the Niners have Aiyuk and thus don't have to pay him. B, get reinstated, and that, according to J.I., would be a near certainty. C, show up for Niners training camp, or at least threaten to show up for training camp. At that point, the Niners almost certainly would cut him, because if they didn't, they'd risk being on the hook for his full compensation for the 2026 season if he at camp suffered a season-ending injury. Aiyuk on Tuesday saying that he, quote, will not be reinstating with them, nor ever doing any kind of business with them, end quote. That goes against this path that I just outlined. Does he not get that? Does he not comprehend that? And yet, he at the same time again expressed this desire to play for Washington this coming season. Quote, I'm locked in and focused on my opportunity to return to the field this season. Hashtag raise hail, end quote. We got a hashtag raise hail from Brandon Aiyuk. Is it at all possible that we at some point get a hashtag take command from Aiyuk? I hope so. But if he truly is not going to apply for reinstatement, then the Niners have no reason to release him. Either he isn't aware of that / doesn't understand that, or he doesn't care. Either way, not good. You know, we've talked about whether this guy might have a mental health problem. Even if he doesn't, he certainly appears to have a judgment problem and a maturity problem. What is Washington general manager Adam Peters thinking about all of this? What is Washington QB1 Jaden Daniels thinking about all of this? And will we get the belt game? Washington at San Francisco on Monday Night Football on October 19th at 8:15. The belt game, the game in which Brandon Aiyuk is promising to deliver a belt-like whipping of the Niners.
We is not cool. We won't be cool, and I will never be stepping in that building except for on October 19th when I come through with that motherfucking belt.
Yeah, as Brandon Aiyuk said in that lengthy YouTube video he posted on June 27th. The Brandon Aiyuk saga on Tuesday afternoon was a topic on ESPN's NFL Live for a second consecutive day. Here was host Laura Rutledge with ESPN NFL insider Jeremy Fowler.
Now, Jeremy, one name that keeps coming up, right, for the Commanders is wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk. Yep. What is the latest going on with his potential availability?
Well, Laura, in his latest Instagram post, Brandon Aiyuk said that he will not be applying for reinstatement because he's on the left squad list of the 49ers. This truly leaves him in no man's land because I'm told the 49ers don't have to do anything. They don't even have to remove him off that list. They could keep him there all season if they want. He has to report to the team in order to facilitate any sort of release or any sort of resolution. He says that he's not doing that, and he doesn't really have any sort of grounds for a grievance with the NFLPA either because he didn't report. So truly in a situation where his options are scarce, if not non-existent right now, because if he becomes a free agent, teams I talked to say that he's not going to be very viable. And at the very least, if he gets on somewhere with the team, it's going to be at a vet minimum contract. He went in the back and forth with Jaden Daniels. It seems like Washington would go another route at this point. Look at maybe a free agent wide receiver closer to training camp.
And there you go. The summer of Aiyuk continues. No matter what happens, we will always look back on the summer of 2026 as the summer of Aiyuk. Hello and welcome to this Wednesday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. Next segment, we for a second consecutive week will indulge in a palate cleanser from all of the Brandon Aiyuk conversation via speaking with our friend, Washington Commanders analyst Mark Bullock of Bullock's Film Room on Substack. He's going to give us all 22 style analysis of various items with Washington's defensive front as we prepare for training camp, including the likelihood of edge defender K'Lavon Chaisson serving in the Andrew Van Ginkel role in defensive coordinator Daronte Jones's Brian Flores-style defense, the extent to which there in the defense will be ample playing time for three linebackers in Sonny Styles, Chenal and Frankie Luvu, how linebacker Jordan Magee fits with the defense, and the team apparently shifting to a 3-4 base defense. Mark Bullock, next segment, and also on the show, I'll talk Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles. Each team lost at home on Tuesday evening. The Nats a 6-3 loss to the Houston Astros at Nationals Park. The O's a 5-2 loss to the Chicago Cubs at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Before we get to feedback, front office changes for the Washington Commanders. We on Tuesday evening had reports that the team is hiring former Minnesota Vikings Vice President of Football Operations Demetrius Washington as a senior personnel executive. He's replacing Scott Fitterer. We on Tuesday afternoon had reports that Washington personnel executive Scott Fitterer is joining the agency Athletes First as an executive. He had been with Washington since July 2024. Scott Fitterer served as general manager of the Carolina Panthers from January 2021 to January 2024. Also, the Washington Wizards, a surprising move. We on Tuesday night had reports that the Wizards have agreed with the Dallas Mavericks on a sign-and trade for Khris Middleton, who the Wizards traded to the Mavs in the Anthony Davis trade this past February. From ESPN NBA insider Shams Charania on Tuesday night in a post on X, quote, just in, free agent Khris Middleton has agreed on a 3-year $17.6 million deal with the Washington Wizards via sign-and-trade. Agent Mike Lindemann of XL Sports Management tells ESPN the 14-year veteran returns to D.C., where he spent parts of last two seasons as a leader with championship presence, end quote. And the Wizards on Tuesday night officially announced the trade for DeAndre Ayton. The news of that trade broke this past Friday afternoon. The Wizards traded Jaden Hardy and, as the team announced, quote, 2 future second-round picks, end quote, to the Los Angeles Lakers for DeAndre Ayton. Here's my take. The Wizards trading for DeAndre Ayton and now agreeing on this sign-and-trade for Khris Middleton. These are moves that further suggest that the Wizards' 3-season tank is over, that the team starting next season is trying to win again. You don't make these moves if you're not trying to win. Additionally, the Wizards on Tuesday afternoon announced having signed the man who they got via the second round of the 2026 NBA Draft, Felix Okpara, to a 2-way contract. The Wizards on the night of the second round, June 24th, traded their 2 second-round picks in the draft, the numbers 51 and 60 overall picks, to the Orlando Magic for the draft rights to the University of Tennessee's Felix Okpara, who the Magic took with the number 46 overall pick. And the Wizards on Tuesday afternoon announced their roster for NBA Summer League 2026 in Las Vegas. The roster includes A.J. DeBonsa, Felix Okpara, Trey Johnson, Will Riley, Jameer Watkins, and Juju Reese. The Wizards' 2026 Summer League opener is against the Utah Jazz at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas on Thursday night at 9 in a game that we expect to feature the player who the Wizards took with the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NBA Draft, A.J. DeBonsa of BYU, versus the player who the Jazz took with the number 2 overall pick in the 2026 NBA Draft, Darren Aaron Peterson of the University of Kansas. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. You can reach me via writing a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can write about whatever you want, and I'll read what you write if you give the podcast a 5-star rating. From Ray G. Hall on X in response to our conversation on last Friday's show, episode 1361 with Warren Sharp of SharpFootballAnalysis.com, author of the Sharp Football Analysis 2026 football preview. This was the second of two conversations with Warren over two consecutive shows talking Washington Commanders. Warren was excellent, and among the topics that he got into on last Friday's show was why head coach Dan Quinn should be on the hot seat. Writes Ray, how should Quinn be on the hot seat when he did more in his first year than any coach in the past 20 years, and those coaches all were not on the hot seat until year 4 or 5? Thank you for that, Ray. There, to me, are three primary reasons for why I do believe that Dan Quinn is on the hot seat. And by the way, being on the hot seat doesn't mean that Washington wants to fire him or is planning on firing him or that he will be fired. Being on the hot seat means that the team doing poorly in the coming season likely will result in the team firing him. Reason number one for why I believe that Dan Quinn is on the hot seat. This is the modern NFL. Right or wrong, the environment in the current NFL is that unless a head coach is well established as a very good head coach, the head coach is unlikely to survive 2 consecutive bad seasons. Drastic turnarounds happen in the NFL all of the time, so there's little patience from owners for their teams not doing well. And owners are richer than ever before and thus have as little problem as they ever have had paying off contracts for fired head coaches. Washington Commanders managing partner Josh Harris, per Forbes, as of Tuesday morning, had a real-time net worth of $10.5 billion. He's not just a billionaire. He's a billionaire 10.5 times over. He can afford to pay off whatever's left on Quinn's contract beyond this season. Harris has that money in between his couch cushions. Reason number two for why I believe that Dan Quinn is on the hot seat. While injuries to me were the number one reason for Washington going 5-12 last regular season, the team's point differential of -95 was really bothersome. What you want from your team, even in an injury-plagued season, is for the team to at least be a tough out. And Washington last season was not a tough out, and that did not reflect well on Quinn. Don't forget about that 4-game stretch from week 7 through 10. The 44-22 loss at the Dallas Cowboys last October 19th. The 28-7 loss at the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football last October 27th. The 38-14 loss to the Seattle Seahawks at Northwest Stadium on Sunday Night Football last November 2nd. The 44-22 loss to the Detroit Lions at Northwest Stadium last November 9th. 4 consecutive blowout losses as part of an 8-game losing streak as Washington's season unraveled. And reason number three for why I believe that Dan Quinn is on the hot seat, there are strong indications that he was not Washington's top choice in the team's head coaching search in the 2024 offseason. The reporting is that Washington made an offer to Mike Macdonald to be the team's head coach before hiring Quinn as head coach on February 3rd, 2024. The Seattle Seahawks on January 31st, 2024 hired Macdonald as their head coach. And as you may have heard, he has done quite well as Seahawks head coach, just won the Super Bowl. So these to me are the three primary reasons for why I do believe that Dan Quinn is on the hot seat. And there are other reasons that you can cite. But to Ray's point in his post on X, Dan Quinn in the 2024 season, without question, had the greatest first season by a head coach in franchise history. 12-5 in the regular season, 2-1 in the postseason. Dan Quinn in the 2024 season joined Joe Gibbs, George Allen, and Ray Flaherty as the only head coaches in franchise history to win multiple playoff games, not just in season number one or in one season, but overall. Dan Quinn in the 2024 season joined Joe Gibbs and George Allen as the only head coaches in franchise history to win multiple games in a single postseason. Dan Quinn in the 2024 season became the first head coach in franchise history to win 2 playoff games in his first season with the franchise. Dan Quinn in the 2024 season led Washington to its first regular season with at least 11 wins since the 1991 regular season. None of this should be forgotten. All of this should be remembered. But 2024 was 2 years ago, and 2 years is a long time in the NFL. 2026 Washington Commanders training camp is coming. Rookies report on July 24th, veterans on July 28th. Football season is coming. If you would like to grow your business or practice, consider advertising on this podcast. We're offering great deals in honor of the coming football season. Podcast advertising is very affordable and works. Put the power of the pod to work for you. Get your message out there to thousands of successful people in the Washington, D.C. area. Grow your business or practice. We'd love to have you on board. Email us to see what we can do for you. The email address is thealgaldypodcast@yahoo.com.
Imagine buying your kid a toy only to find the batteries aren't included, or buying furniture but missing the tools to build it. Frustrating, right? Now imagine the exact same feeling, but you're paying way more. That is what buying business software usually feels like. Fragmented, disconnected, and incredibly expensive. Odoo completely changes that. Odoo is a complete, fully integrated business suite where all your apps actually talk to each other. We're talking automated lead routing for your sales team, seamless AI integration, and intuitive point-and-click website builder. It's everything your business needs to scale, saving you time, headaches, and money. Stop piecing your software together. Go to odoo.com. That's odoo.com to learn more.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat, emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending. Zero tears.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
So you look at the Washington Commanders 2026 offseason program. It included a 3-day rookie minicamp from May 8th through the 10th, 3 3-day OTA sessions, May 27th through the 29th, June 2nd through the 4th, and June 9th through the 11th, and a 3-day mandatory minicamp from June 16th through the 18th. The first day of the rookie minicamp was open to the media. The first day of each 3-day session of OTAs was open to the media. And each day of the mandatory minicamp was open to the media. But Washington, in case you don't know, has strict rules about what media members can record and say about what the team did in these offseason practices. General Manager Adam Peters worked in the scouting department of the New England Patriots for the 2003 through 2008 seasons. Peters' formative years as an NFL executive were spent with the Pats during the peak of their dynasty, with Bill Belichick as head coach and Tom Brady as QB1. Peters learned under Belichick. There very much are Belichickian qualities to Peters. And so he has strict rules about what media members can record and say about what the team did in its offseason practices. However, something that Washington Commanders analyst and former Washington Redskins tight end Logan Paulsen discussed on this podcast on episode 1351 was that Washington, during its 2026 offseason practices, had edge defender K'Lavon Chaisson in the Andrew Van Ginkel role. Not always, but a decent amount of the time. Washington, this past January 30th, announced having hired Daronte Jones as defensive coordinator. He spent 5 of the previous 6 seasons with the Minnesota Vikings. He was the Vikings defensive backs coach for the 2020 and 2022 seasons and was the Vikings defensive passing game coordinator / defensive backs coach for the 2003 through 2025 seasons, which were the first 3 seasons for Brian Flores as Vikings defensive coordinator. The Vikings defenses under Flores have been really good, and the reason for that has been edge defender Andrew Van Ginkel, who, as you may recall, helped to wreck Washington in its 31-0 loss at the Vikings this past December 7th. That loss, by the way, eliminated Washington from playoff contention for the 2025 season, and that was quarterback Jaden Daniels' final game of the season. He in that game returned from a 3-game absence caused by a dislocated left elbow, but 4th and 3 for Washington at the Vikings 19 with 8:24 left in the third quarter. Daniels was intercepted by Andrew Van Ginkel, who generated a 40-yard return. Daniels took a shotgun snap, and while being pressured, had his pass tipped by Van Ginkel, who then caught the ball. Daniels, while chasing Van Ginkel on the return, got shoved to the ground by cornerback Isaiah Rodgers, and Daniels landed on his left elbow, re-injuring the left elbow, and ultimately leading to him being shut down for the rest of the season. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the Al Galdi podcast, Washington Commanders analyst Mark Bullock. Mark is exceptional at talking Commanders from an X's and O's standpoint. He does tremendous Commanders All 22 breakdowns. You can read his work on his Substack, Bullock's Film Room, which you can find at markbullock.substack.com. He has more than 4,000 subscribers. Mark has written for The Athletic and for The Washington Post. He also is a Commanders fan. You can follow Mark on X at Mark Bullock NFL. Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Doing well. Good to talk to you. So we get it. These were off-season practices for Washington. You should not react to anything too much, but it is interesting that it was K'Lavon Chaisson who Daronte Jones, at least some of the time, had in the Andrew Van Ginkel role, a key role in a Brian Flores-style defense. Explain, if you would, what exactly the Van Ginkel role is, and what do you think about Chaisson serving in that role?
Yeah, that was an interesting one to see come out from Logan. I'm surprised he was allowed to say that specifically, given that he's working with the team. But that feels like it's giving stuff away. But yeah, it's an interesting one. So that Andrew Van Ginkel role in this defense, or certainly in the Vikings defense that we're expecting Daronte Jones to bring over, is a really key role in the defense, in the whole scheme. It makes it kind of work. And the way that Vikings defense works is it's a 3-4 defense, so they have the three big interior defensive linemen up front, and those guys are primarily run stuffers. And then you have your two outside linebackers and your two inside linebackers. That's your four linebackers. And the outside linebackers are edge guys, but they can all line up, move around all over the place. And the whole point of the defense is that you can disguise who's going to blitz and who's going to drop into coverage. And all of those linebackers, both the inside linebackers and the outside linebackers, all need to be able to have some sort of competency of dropping into coverage and blitzing and rushing. Because on any given play, they might all rush, they might all drop into coverage. Half of them, two of them might go, two of them might drop, three of them might go, one of them might drop. And in the Vikings defense, Andrew Van Ginkel was the edge rusher that you would see opposite Jonathan Greenard, and Greenard would be the guy that would rush 90% of the time. Van Ginkel would drop into coverage. I don't have the exact numbers, but it felt like kind of 50-50. It would be half the time he'd be rushing and he'd be a competent edge rusher, but half the time he'd also be dropping off into coverage to allow an inside linebacker to blitz or safety to blitz, and they still keep the numbers in coverage to be able to play sound zone coverage behind it. And so that's a very important role in this defense. There's not a lot of it takes a specific kind of skill set, a guy that can be competent rushing the passer, a guy that can be competent holding up an edge in the run game, and a guy that can be competent in coverage. It's a very well-rounded skill set. And Van Ginkel is not necessarily elite in any one of those categories, but he's competent and very good in all three of them. And that's not something you see very often from edge rushers. Usually, like a young athletic edge rusher is focused on rushing the passer, and they're good at pass rushing and maybe okay at run defense, but they're not going to do any sort of coverage stuff. Sometimes we've talked in the offseason about like moving a Frankie Luvu or a Leo Chenal to that spot, and those guys would be more adept at being kind of the coverage side of things because they're linebackers. They drop into coverage more frequently. They're both physical guys that could play on the edge in the run game and hold up okay, but neither of them are particularly good pass rushers when having to take on offensive linemen consistently. So they have guys that could tick maybe two of the three boxes, but not necessarily all three. And that's what makes Van Ginkel such a unique player. And that's what makes it a very hard role for them to fill. So that's what the role is. In terms of K'Lavon Chaisson filling it, Chaisson was a guy that when I looked at free agents before free agency started, there was two guys that stood out as guys that could fill that role, and it was Jalen Phillips and K'Lavon Chaisson, as both guys were good athletes, both guys were capable of dropping into coverage, both guys were capable of setting an edge, and both guys were capable of rushing the passer. Now, primarily they were both pass rushers, and decent-ish run defenders, but they both had some ability, the kind of fluidity to drop into coverage and show that they could do that. And I think when you look at what Washington's offseason has been, every edge rusher they've added does have that athleticism and that fluidity to drop into coverage. Odafe Owe did it a ton with the Ravens and did it a little bit with the Chargers. Now they're not paying him $100 million to drop into coverage, but he's someone that could do it a couple times a game. And K'Lavon Chaisson again has that athletic fluidity to be able to drop into coverage competently, sit in his own coverage, and keep the structure of the defense sound while someone else blitz from the other side. Joshua Josephs, they drafted in a fifth or sixth round. He is another guy that is an edge rusher that has some pass rush upside, but also has the fluidity to drop into coverage. So, and Dorrance Armstrong again is a guy that with Dallas had that fluidity to drop into coverage. So they've now got this battery of edge rushers that are all pass rushers first, but they all have the fluidity to drop into coverage. So it's interesting to see that Logan said Chaisson was the guy doing it more often than not. My thought was they are all a little bit raw in that dropping to coverage aspect, and I thought what they would do is kind of split it up amongst all of them. So rather than have, like, the thing with the Vikings is Van Ginkel was the guy that would drop more often and the Greenard would rush off the other side. I thought what Washington might try to do is be a little bit less predictable. And, if we're talking, there's 60 snaps in the game, right? If you're talking 30 of those are runs, then you're talking 30 passes. If you want to drop an edge rusher off into coverage, you're probably doing that half the time at most. So that's 15 snaps that you need an edge rusher to drop into coverage. You could probably split that up sort of 4 or 5 reps for Chaisson, 4 or 5 reps for Owe, 4 or 5 reps for Armstrong. If Joshua Joseph shows that he can play, he could do a few of those. If you wanted to move Luvu or Chenal to the edge, he could do a few of those. So that's what I thought they were going to do is split that up amongst them a little bit more. But it sounds like from what Logan's saying is Chaisson's being the guy that's kind of getting the first crack at it and doing it a little bit more frequently, which is interesting. I think he has the capability, but he's going to need to be coached up in that coverage stuff a little bit more because he hasn't done it a ton.
Tied to this issue of who will play the Andrew Van Ginkel role for Washington is the team's situation at linebacker. The team's linebackers are Sonny Styles, Leo Chenal, Frankie Luvu, Jordan Magee, Kane Medrano, Nick Bellore, and Ale Cajo. You on your Substack on June 2nd put up a post, headline, quote, "Can the Commanders make use of all their inside linebackers?" And, quote, looking at the top three, Styles, Chenal, and Luvu, do you see there being an odd man out here given that teams in the modern NFL play just 2 linebackers at a time? Or do you see Daronte Jones finding ample opportunity for all 3 guys to play?
I kind of going to sit on the fence and say he could go either way. The thing that they've done with rebuilding this front is they have created a lot more depth across the entire front in the D-line, on the edge, at the linebacker position. It's far more depth than we're used to seeing in Washington on defense, which is good. But it does create kind of that odd man out situation. So if you're talking about that 3-4 defense that we were just saying with the Vikings, they were very set on having their 3 interior defensive linemen on the field a lot of the time. And if you're doing that, then you're only having 2 inside linebackers behind them. And if you're doing that, Sonny Styles, we're assuming is going to be locked in. You don't take him 7th overall for him to not be a starting inside linebacker for you. So that means either it's going to be Frankie Luvu or it's going to be your free agent signing Leo Chenal that lines up next to Styles. So your primary option there is you probably bench with one of them or you rotate them, but you're benching one of them essentially. And I would think that given they just signed Chenal and they drafted Styles, Luvu being the kind of older body and on a final year of his contract would probably be the odd man out, and that would potentially lead to, like, you could view it as 2 ways. You could see, well, it's great depth, and if we get an injury or if Leo Chenal doesn't step up the way they think he could, Luvu can come in and do a good job. But you could also see it as, well, now they have an excess of linebackers and maybe they might be able to trade him during training camp or before cutdowns to get something back for him. So that would be an interesting way of going about it. But there are other options. Like we just talked about the Van Ginkel role. They could try shifting either Chenal or Luvu. Both have very similar kind of profiles. They could try shifting one of those guys to the edge that gives them the guy that can drop into coverage a lot more reliably. But then they'd have to coach one of those guys up to be more of a pass rusher. And neither of them have shown that they can consistently beat an offensive lineman in pass protection. So that would be, for me, that would be a tougher way of going about that Van Ginkel role. I think it would probably be easier to teach a fluid athlete like a Chaisson or Owe or Armstrong to drop off into coverage a handful of times a game than it would be to teach a Chenal or a Luvu to try to rush the passer 30 times a game. So I think that is potentially a way they're going to go, but given what they've done on the edge, I don't think it's the most likely option. And then the third option that I wrote about was you could switch to a 4-3. Now I think one of the key themes of this Vikings defense was that they were a 3-4. It was to get those three big interior defensive linemen on the field so that they could stuff the run and they could keep their both safeties back deep to be able to disguise their coverages pre-snap. If you shift to a 4-3, suddenly you're losing that big interior body to stuff the run. You might have to then consider those edge rushers. Do we switch an Armstrong or a Chaisson out for Dietrich Wise or Charles Menechue, a bigger body to play on the edge to give us a little bit more stoutness in the run game? But that would solve your question of, can you get all three linebackers on the field? Because then you'd have Styles as the Mike, and then you can have Chenal and Luvu either side of him. So I think if Luvu sticks around, and I think it's probably more likely than not he does, because they talk about him well as a kind of a leader, then I think they will have a three linebacker package where you see all three on the field. And I don't think it will be like a 50% of the time they're running that, but I think they will have that in their kind of battery of things to go to. But I think the more consistent defense we're going to see is we're going to see a 3-4 base with two inside linebackers, which means one of those guys is going to have to miss out. And I think that's probably going to be Luvu.
Specific to Jordan Magee, so many nice things have been said about him since Washington took him in the 5th round of the 2024 NFL draft out of Temple. But he this past season, a lost season in which playing a younger player like Magee made sense, did not play all that much. He played on more than half of Washington's defensive snaps in a game just twice over the team's final 8 games this past regular season. He is highly athletic, registered a relative athletic score of 9.6 on a 0 to 10 scale. What's your outlook for Magee in Washington's new defense?
Yeah, it feels like he's going to be the kind of the backup Mike linebacker behind, Sonny Styles. And it feels like he was being groomed to be the Bobby Wagner replacement, and how they drafted the Bobby Wagner replacement, and he's got to be stuck on the depth chart behind him. And that's where it opens up this question. If you're looking at the roster, and it's kind of too far away to really be getting into it, but if you take a big picture look at it, you can see that, they entered the offseason with Luvu and Magee as their projected starters, and they've now come through the offseason with replacing both of those guys, which gives you a ton of depth. But you could see a way in which you have Styles and Chenal as your starters, you have a younger guy in Jordan Magee as your depth piece, and then you probably only want to carry 5 linebackers. You've got Kane Medrano, who's a young athletic piece, draft pick from last year, who didn't really play but has some athletic upside. You've got Nick Bellore, who shouldn't be overlooked because he's a key special teams ace guy that they love having on special teams, and he's usually their 5th linebacker. And then you've got Frankie Luvu, so you've kind of got 3 guys for 2 spots. Again, that comes to, do you keep the young guy in Magee and have him be the primary backup to both Chenal and Styles? And then you have Medrano as your young developmental guy and Bellore as your special teams ace, which means then, again, you're talking about potentially trading Frankie Luvu. So it becomes a really interesting question, but I think it's something that probably is getting a little bit too far ahead of ourselves at this point in the offseason, because that's kind of a late training camp conversation to be had.
And, of course, somebody can get injured and the entire conversation can change. You on your Substack on May 15th put up a post headline, quote, "Did Commanders' rookie minicamp confirm 3-4 defense?" End quote. The presumption has been that Daronte Jones is going with a Brian Flores-style defense. That presumption appears to be correct. Within that presumption has been the thought that Washington is going back to a 3-4 base defense. And you, in studying footage from rookie minicamp, people, this is how sick Mark is. He studied footage from rookie minicamp. But you, in studying footage from rookie minicamp, have seen confirmation that the team is going back to a 3-4 base defense.
Yeah, I mean, it is limited on what we're getting to see, and I'm not there in practices. For anyone that doesn't know and can't tell from the accent, I live in Europe, so I don't get to see the practices. But from the clips that they put out online, all the drills that we're seeing it's a 3-4 defense. You're seeing 3 interior defensive linemen. You're seeing 2 inside linebackers behind them. All the drills that they're doing is those guys dropping into coverage and blitzing and doing the kind of stuff that we saw the Vikings linebackers do last year. So that to me says it is a 3-4 defense, or at the very least, the base install of the defense is a 3-4. So that's going to be the foundation. They could have other packages off of that and get into 4-3 stuff, but the base, the foundation of the offense, I think, the defense is probably going to be that 3-4, yeah.
Washington Commanders analyst Mark Bullock of Bullock's Film Room on Substack. Mark, thanks, and we'll talk soon.
Of course, talk soon.
All right. Hey, make sure that you check out the BGO Blind Pig podcast, which is the official podcast of BGObsession.com, a terrific Washington Commanders forum. Anyone can join. And BGO Blind Pig essentially is the forum in podcast form, a roundtable discussion about the Washington Commanders. It's like you and a bunch of your buddies who are Washington fans are hanging out and talking about the team. The conversation is smart and fun and respectful. You can find the BGO Blind Pig podcast on YouTube and on any major podcast provider. I was fortunate enough to be on a recent installment of the BGO Blind Pig podcast. Make BGObsession.com the home for your burgundy and gold obsession, and make the BGO Blind Pig podcast part of your Washington Commanders podcast rotation. So the Washington Nationals, for all of their surprising success, are the only team in MLB's 2026 regular season without a walk-off win. They on Tuesday evening had a good chance to change that, but they unfortunately did not change that. A 6-3 loss to the Houston Astros at Nationals Park on Tuesday evening in Game 2 of a 3-game series. The Nats in this regular season now are 47-46 with a run differential of +7. The Astros in this regular season now are 46-48 with a run differential of -42. The Nats on Tuesday evening scored just 3 runs despite totaling 11 hits and working 4 walks. The 11 hits were 2 home runs, a double, and 8 singles, but the Nats went 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position and struck out 10 times. The Nats' run total in this game should have been much higher than 3. No out with runners in scoring position was more painful than the final out. Dylan Cruz, as a pinch hitter, struck out in facing Astros closer Josh Hader with the bases loaded and 2 outs to end the game. Cruz, since being recalled from AAA Rochester on May 19th, has 37 strikeouts versus just 8 walks. Another big out for the Nats was the final out in the bottom of the 8th. Nasim Nunez, as the Nats starting shortstop and number 7 batter, went 2 for 4 with 2 singles. Nunez in the bottom of the 8th had a 2-out first pitch infield single to the right side of the infield, but he got thrown out in an attempted steal of second base for the 3rd out with the Nats down 6-2. That is a no-no, getting thrown out in an attempted steal in a spot like that. Now, in fairness to Nunez, he in this regular season has been so good on stolen bases, 33 for 37, even with what happened in this game, but that was a bad out. James Wood did homer. He is the Nats starting right fielder, and number 1 batter went 2 for 4 with a solo homer, a single, and a walk. Wood in the Nats' 1-run first had a leadoff homer to right center field for a 1-0 Nats lead. The homer went a projected 419 feet per Statcast as Wood is back to being on fire. He, for this regular season, now has 25 home runs and an OPS of 949. And Wood now, for this regular season, has a first inning OPS of 1,069. I wonder if at some point he, as the number 1 batter, gets intentionally walked in a first inning. I'm serious about that. I wonder if at some point Wood, as the number one batter, gets intentionally walked in a first inning. He in these first innings has been so good. I wonder if at some point a manager decides to have his pitcher intentionally walk Wood as the leadoff batter in a first inning. The Nats' other homer on Tuesday evening came from Jose Tena. He and the Nats' one-run ninth had a pinch one-out solo homer to right center field to cut the Nats deficit to 6-3, despite having been down in the count at 1.12. Luis Garcia Jr., he is the Nats' starting first baseman and number two batter, went 2 for 3 with 2 singles. His OPS for this regular season now is at 874. Curtis Mead, he is the Nats' starting third baseman and number 3 batter, went 2 for 5 with a double and a single. His OPS for this regular season now is at 821. The Nats' starting pitcher in this 6-3 loss to the Astros at Nationals Park on Tuesday evening was Andrew Alvarez. Disappointing outing for him. He allowed 5 runs in 5 2/3 innings. He gave up just 4 hits, all of which were singles, but he issued 5 walks and a hit by pitch, recorded 3 strikeouts through 97 pitches, 55 strikes, 42 balls. Alvarez in the top of the second allowed a run on a hit by pitch, a walk, a single, and a sac fly. Alvarez in the top of the fourth allowed 3 runs on 2 singles, 2 walks, and a sac fly. And Alvarez in the top of the sixth allowed a run on 2 walks and a single. Andrew Alvarez now at the major league level in this regular season, 12 games, including 6 starts, ERA of 3.64, whip of 1.40. He is putting a lot of guys on base. His walks per 9 innings is at 4.02. And Nats manager Blake Butera not at all happy about the 5 walks issued by Andrew Alvarez in this game. Take a listen to these exchanges from Butera's post-game session with reporters on Tuesday night.
What do you think led to the walks today?
I don't know if it was pitching scared. That's what it felt like. I know we threw a 3-0 breaking ball to Cam Smith one at bat, which I didn't love. If we're going to go down, we got to go down attacking. I've said that from the beginning of the year. I was just surprised to see that.
When you say pitching scared, what do you see that gives you that choice?
A 3-0 breaking ball.
Yeah.
Is that for you more of a mentality switch that you need to see?
Yeah.
What goes about fixing that? How do you go about fixing that?
Just reiterating that he has really good stuff, which he does. Like, he has the stuff to compete and have success here in the big leagues. Like I said, 4 hits, like against a right-hand heavy lineup outside of one hitter. It's not easy to do. But we have to limit the walks, and we have to keep telling him his stuff's really good, that almost like let them hit it, like attack these guys, make them swing the bats, because he has the stuff to do well, and as we've seen, like he's had some really good outings. But when we're walking 5 guys, it's really hard to come back from that.
And I know that's been an organization-wide message for you guys, especially for the guys who have really good stuff of throwing those pitches in the zone. Why do you think it maybe hasn't clicked with him just yet?
I don't think all of his outings have been like this. I think tonight was a little unorthodox. I think he'll be fine his next one. I really do. I just thought tonight it just looked like he was just struggling to find something he could throw for a strike. Maybe that's why it was a 3-0 breaking ball. But whenever I see that, I kind of worry about what our mentality is.
Yeah, Blake Butera not holding back about his displeasure with Andrew Alvarez issuing 5 walks. But the Nats' relief pitching in this 6-3 loss to the Astros at Nationals Park on Tuesday evening was good. 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 1 run in 3 1/3 innings. Justin Lawrence retired, the only batter he faced. He came into the game in the top of the 6th with runners at the corners, 2 outs, and the Nats down 5-2. And he generated a cold strikeout of the Astros' number 1 batter, Jose Altuve. Matt Crook made his Nats debut. He tossed 2/3 of a scoreless inning, but he in the top of the 7th faced 5 batters in getting the 2 outs as he gave up a single and issued a walk and a hit by pitch. The Nats this past Saturday afternoon announced having claimed Crook off outright waivers from the Athletics. Riley Cornelio allowed 1 run in 1 1/3 innings with 3 strikeouts, which came over the first 3 batters he faced. He came into the game in the top of the 7th with the bases loaded, 2 outs, and the Nats down 5-2, and he generated a swinging strikeout of Bryce Matthews, but Cornelio in the top of the 8th allowed a run on a 2-out solo homer by Jose Altuve to left center field for a 6-2 Astros lead, and Carson Palmquist tossed a scoreless and hitless top of the 9th. Also regarding Nats relief pitching, how about manager Blake Butera? he has taken the blame for what happened with relief pitcher Cole Henry on Monday evening. So Henry in the Nats' 12-11 win over the Astros at Nationals Park on Monday evening allowed 4 runs in 1 2/3 innings. He tossed a perfect top of the 7th with 2 swinging strikeouts, but he in the top of the 8th allowed 4 runs, including giving up a 2-out 3-run homer by Bryce Matthews to left field to cut the Nats' lead to 12-11, despite Henry having had Matthews down in the count at 1.12. The Nats on Monday afternoon had announced having recalled Henry from AAA Rochester, and the Nats late night on Monday night announced having optioned Henry back to AAA Rochester. What happened with Henry on Monday evening was not the first time that we've seen a Nats relief pitcher in an appearance this season do well in an initial inning, but then struggle in being asked to go beyond that inning. Blake Butera during his pregame session with reporters on Tuesday afternoon, quote, "Look, I will 100% wear Cole Henry's poor second inning last night. To be very transparent and truthful, I think we did Cole a disservice because we didn't have him throw multiple innings at AAA. But a lot of times when we bring a player up from AAA, it's because our bullpen's thin and we're going to need them to throw multiple innings," end quote. Good for Blake Butera for doing that. Now, I do wonder if an underlying message via what he was saying was that the Nats as an organization need to do a better job of preparing AAA relievers for throwing multiple innings in appearances. You'll notice that Butera multiple times used the pronoun we as opposed to I. He initially did say I, but then we got a whole bunch of we's. But Butera did take responsibility as a manager should. Blake Butera will turn 34 on August 7th. The Nats, this past Halloween, announced the hiring of Blake Butera as manager. They hired him off him having never played or coached above the single A level of professional baseball. This was a risky hire, no doubt, but he, to me, overall, is doing a very good job as Nats manager. He, to me, is a candidate for National League Manager of the Year. Game 3 for the Nats against the Astros at Nationals Park, Wednesday evening at 6:45. The Nats have listed Foster Griffin as their probable starting pitcher for the game. And speaking of Foster Griffin, so as we have discussed, he is worthy of being on the 2026 National League All-Star team, but MLB on Tuesday evening announced 3 replacements for starting pitchers on the NL All-Star team, and Griffin was not among the replacements. So the replacements were Philadelphia Phillies starting pitcher and former Nats prospect Jesus Luzardo, Pittsburgh Pirates starting pitcher Braxton Ashcraft, and St. Louis Cardinals closer Riley O'Brien. I submit to you the following. Foster Griffin, for this regular season as of games through Monday, had outperformed Luzardo and Ashcraft in each of the following categories: wins above replacement per Baseball Reference, ERA, ERA plus, and win probability added per Baseball Reference. I don't get why those 3 guys got chosen over Griffin. Foster Griffin deserves to be an all-star.
If your business runs on 5 different apps, 12 browser tabs, and 1 spreadsheet that everyone's afraid to touch, it's probably time for Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that connects every part of your business into one powerful, easy-to-use platform. So instead of wasting time switching between disconnected systems, your entire business works together in real time. Your team moves faster, your data stays accurate, and you can actually focus on growing your business. Let one unified system run your entire business. From the first opportunity to the final payment, everything works together in one place. Whether you're a small business or managing a large operation, Odoo gives you one flexible platform built to grow with you. Learn more at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
Well, the Baltimore Orioles in MLB's 2026 regular season now are 42-50, the same record that the O's had through 92 games last regular season before being aggressive sellers regarding the trade deadline. Is that what the O's will be for this season's trade deadline, which is on August 3rd at 6 p.m. Eastern? Right now, the answer to that question clearly is heck yeah. A 5-2 loss to the Chicago Cubs at Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Tuesday evening, and Game game 1 of a 3-game series. The O's in this regular season now are 42-50 with a run differential of -31. The Cubs in this regular season now are 51-40 with a run differential of +49. The O's on Tuesday evening, bad offensively, just 2 runs, just 6 hits, all of which were singles, just 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position, 12 strikeouts. The O's did draw 3 walks, but the O's got worked by Cubs starting pitcher Matthew Boyd. He tossed 6 scoreless innings with 7 strikeouts. Boyd is a lefty. The O's for this regular season now have a team OPS of just .661 versus left-handed pitching. During the post-game press conference of O's manager Craig Albernaz on Tuesday night had this exchange.
Craig told us before the game that you were manipulating the lineup a little bit tonight in order to figure out the left-handed pitching issue. I don't know if this is the right word, so I'll just ask you, do you guys feel like this is maybe reaching a point of desperation where you guys are trying to just do anything to figure it out?
Yeah, no, it's not desperation. I think we're trying to problem solve left-handed pitching, and Matty Boyd, his right-left splits are not as drastic, so it was a good opportunity to get our lefties in there. And also, our lefties do a really good job of managing at bat, working walks, get to first base. It didn't happen tonight, but we were confident in the lefties that we had in there with Beavers and Holiday and Basayo.
Well, the only Orioles player with more than 1 hit in this game was the team's only All-Star this season, at least so far, Adley Rutschman. He is the Orioles starting catcher and number 2 batter, went 2 for 4 with a 2-run single and another single. Rutschman in the Orioles' 2-run 7th had a 2-out, bases loaded, 2-run single through the right side of the infield to cut the Orioles' deficit to 4-2. Also on the play was Cubs right fielder Seiya Suzuki committing a throwing error. Adley Rutschman for this regular season now has an OPS of .778, but otherwise not much happening with the Orioles offense in this game. Gunnar Henderson, as the Orioles starting shortstop and number 3 batter, went 1 for 4 with a single and 2 strikeouts. His OPS for this regular season now is .699. It is criminal that a guy as good and talented as Gunnar Henderson has an OPS that starts with a 6. What has happened with him? Henderson, off a hot start to this regular season, has become one of the biggest disappointments on the team, and nobody can pinpoint why exactly he's struggling, but he's not hitting balls as hard as he has in the past. He's not hitting for power like he has in the past, and he's not getting on base like he has in the past. The Orioles starting pitcher in this 5-2 loss to the Cubs at Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Tuesday evening was Shane Baz. A so-so outing for him. He allowed 3 runs in 6 innings. He gave up 6 hits, which were a double and 5 singles. He issued 3 walks, so recorded just 3 strikeouts. He threw 100 pitches, 63 strikes, 37 balls. Shane Baz now in this regular season, 18 games, all starts, ERA of 4.21, whip of 1.37. The Orioles relief pitching in this 5-2 loss to the Cubs at Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Tuesday evening was not good. 2 Orioles relievers combined to allow 2 runs in 3 innings. Anthony Nunez allowed 2 runs in 2 innings. He has struggled at the major league level in this regular season. 33 games, 36 into 3rd innings, ERA of 5.20, whip of 1.32. Nick Rickey tossed a perfect top of the 9th as Nick Rickey is back. The O's on Tuesday afternoon announced having recalled him from AAA Norfolk and announced having option relief pitcher Cameron Weston to Norfolk after the Orioles' 3-2 loss at the Cincinnati Reds this past Sunday afternoon. Game 2 for the O's against the Cubs at Oriole Park at Camden Yards Wednesday evening at 6:35. The O's have listed Dean Kramer as their probable starting pitcher for the game. And that'll do it for you and me for now, but there's more to come. Thursday's show, episode 1365, will provide you with more on the Washington Commanders. Also on Thursday's show, I'll talk Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles. The Nats are home to the Houston Astros Wednesday evening at 6:45 for Game 3 of a 3-game series. The O's are home to the Chicago Cubs Wednesday evening at 6:35 for Game 2 of a 3-game series. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.
We is not cool. We won't be cool, and I will never be stepping in that building except for on October 19th when I come through with that motherfucking belt.